everyone, my name is Taryn and thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Nicole Flower House. This channel is all about my cut flower garden and I'm located in Zone 7B. The footage I'm showing you is about a month old. I took these videos right around Halloween. And so I just want to let you know that this is not what the garden looks like right now. We have had a frost since then, but I still wanted to show all of these videos. This first garden bed, as you can see, has lots of pollinators on it, but I really wanted to get it prepped so I can put bachelor's buttons in here, which is a frost-tolerant flower. Planting them in the fall will let them bloom much earlier in the spring. So instead of taking all of these zinnias out, I'm just going to prep the soil around them. You can see they're very diseased and I could never use these as cut flowers, but there's so many pollinators on them that I don't have the heart to take them out. I'm just moving the mulch aside and I'm going to give the soil a nice dose of water. This is water that I've harvested from my rain barrels, which I'm really liking. I don't have an irrigation system yet, but that is something I want to work on in the future. And now that I have the mulch pulled aside from this bed and some water on there, I will probably add in a little bit of horse manure compost to give the soil a nutritional boost and a biology boost, and then this will be all set to plant seeds. Even though it's wintertime and we're not getting much sun, we still have some warm afternoons and warm days, so I'm hoping that the seeds will germinate. Next, I am using a small tiller to create a brand new bed. Now, I don't till my garden beds every year. I am a no-till garden, but I will till up new garden beds just one time. And that's to get a lot of the grass, the roots and everything out of this spot. So the tiller is not very deep, maybe just a couple inches to grab a bunch of the grass. And then I'm going to use this composted horse manure to add to it. There is a lot of weeds and grass in it, but it's pretty easy to get it out. So I'm not too worried about it right now. The weeds are really obvious when they sprout up, and so that is something I do have to take care of, but I think it's worth it because it has a lot of soil biology and nutrition in here, and I would like to add that to my garden bed despite the weeds. Now this right here is called a garden mat. It's just the same thing as the woven landscape fabric that a lot of farming and gardening channels use. I like this because the holes are already pre-burned into it. I am not really doing a large scale operation here, so I didn't want to invest in getting a torch and burning my own holes. That would be a lot less expensive, but it would take me a long time. And I don't really plan on doing many more rows than the ones I bought. I bought 5 of these, so I have the potential to do 5 rows with the garden mats. There's 100 holes per mat, so that's 500 plants. That is way more, I think, than I could ever need at this point. And if in the future I can always get more. But I think this is a great option if you're not wanting to buy landscape fabric and burn your own holes in it. You can just get these pre-burned ones. And there's multiple options if you just like go on a search engine on the internet and search for landscape fabric with holes, and you'll come up with several options. This one in particular is called garden mats. Now, moving my sub pod, which is my worm composting system, is something that I've wanted to do for a while. These two garden beds that are off our patio here pretty much get ignored because they're physically removed from the rest of my garden. So I've decided to move the plants that are in these garden beds and the worm bin over to the main garden. So that's just a small project that I've been wanting to do for a while, and we accomplished moving one box at this point. I've got the worm bin all settled into its new place. And you can see in here I just have paper grocery bags covering up the worms. They originally came with what was called a worm blanket that served the same purpose. I think it was made out of wool or something, but that has completely broken down. So the paper bags work. I kind of have a steady supply of those, and so whenever I need to give the worms a new covering, I just cover them up with that. It kind of keeps the environment cooler and retains moisture and makes it a happy little home for those composting worms. Next, I want to show you my chrysanthemums. These are heirloom mums that I planted from plugs several years ago. And they did bloom in time for Halloween, which was super exciting because I loved the color of these. And they get really, really tall. So I'm wondering, once I cut these back this year, I might try to move these into a location into the ground instead of up in these garden boxes. 2 years in a row, they've completely fallen over. This year I did put some green mesh on the hoops supporting them, and I thought that would keep them from falling over, but it didn't. You can see they're completely over that walkway and into the next neighboring garden bed. So I'll have to do something with these next year that's a little bit different, but I'm loving the blooms and the fall color. They bloomed at just the perfect time. So here is the update on my chrysanthemums. And now we'll just kind of walk through the garden and I'll show you some blooms that are left. This is the last look of the blooms that we'll get this year prior to the frost. And like I said, this footage is about a month old, so we've already had a frost. So these zinnias do not look like this anymore. So I'm just kind of savoring the moment here and just looking at all the gorgeous flowers for one last time this season. And even though the frost has come, there is still work to do for me in the garden to ensure that I have a beautiful spring flush. These are my ranunculus transplants. I just took corms and planted them out into these trays so that I could see how well they germinated. I like using the plugs so that I don't have holes when I'm planting the plants out into the garden beds. It just kind of saves me space. This year I'm doing something a little different, and I'm using all 8 of my garden boxes to plant up with ranunculus and tulips. Usually I save a bunch of garden boxes and I only use a few of them to plant spring bulbs. But this year when I sold my tulips and ranunculus, I completely sold out. So I'm looking to expand that a little bit. Spring bulbs is a time where I'm able to sell a lot of flowers because it's right around Easter and Mother's Day. I also picked a lot of gomphrena to dry. I'm wanting to learn how to make wreaths and use dried flowers over the winter. I'm just kind of experimenting with it. The gomphrena dry very nicely, as you can see here. I've done nothing but just kind of lay them out flat. You can also hang them up to dry, but I just haven't had time to do that. So these have turned out pretty well. These dahlias right here, I dried in the powder, the silica powder. I didn't do a very good job though, because the bottom or the back side of the flowers are quite smushed, so you have to be really careful with how you place them into the powder. However you place them in the powder is exactly the shape you're going to get when they're dry. Now here's the zinnias that I showed you at the very beginning of the video. Obviously I'm not going to be using these for any projects, but I just kind of laid them flat, and also I hung a few upside down just to see, and they lost their color and the petals shriveled up. So I think I'm going to try drying zinnias again next season, but I will try with the silica powder instead of just laying them out flat. These did not turn out how I was hoping. This is what they looked like before I dried them, and this is what they look like now. So next year I'll be trying a different method. These right here are also zinnias that have had all the petals pulled off of them. They dried fine. I'm not sure if I like them or not. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I was just curious what these would look like, and I don't know if they're really usable or how I would use them in any dried arrangements, but something to look at. Next, I wanted to show you a vase life test that I was doing for some of my garden roses. These are Strawberry Hill roses, and I'm only getting 2 days worth of life out of the big bloom in the center. This one is completely spent, and I know they don't last as long because I don't use preservatives or anything in the water, so I'm just trying to see how much life I can get out of them naturally with just using plain fresh water every day. So these petals just very easily come off, and the vase there on the right had a similar large flower in the center that I clipped off. So I'm going to clip this one off, so now it looks just like the vase on the right, but this one is about 2 days older, and you can see that the blooms, or the buds I mean, are starting to open up a little bit. Now these buds, I've let this vase go for a while longer after I took this video, and they do not completely open up like that large center bloom. They just kind of stay in this tighter formation, but it's still pretty, and it's nice to know that you can clip that center bloom off once it's done and still get some enjoyment from the buds. And what's left after all the petals fall off is this neat little piece in the center, and I'm thinking about experimenting with drying those to see what those might look like. Well, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. And the best way you can support me and my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower-loving friends. I'll see you next time. Bye.